Comedians from the World Series of Comedy Part 2. That's what's coming up on The Art of Bombing, episode 169.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Now podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to a brand new episode of The Art of Bombing. Dan Bublich Jr. here with you, coming at you from the World Series of Comedy in Las Vegas at the Strat, taking place in the LA Comedy Club week-long festival. I'm doing episodes. I'm going to try to keep this intro quick because we got lots of episodes coming out this week, including my episode today, because we have great comics from all over the country that are performing in the festival, including the comedian that's on today, Jared Kassebaum. He's a very funny comedian. We had a great conversation. That's what's going to be coming up. Before we get into that conversation, I'm going to keep, like I said, try to keep things quick as possible. But if you want to watch the World Series of Comedy, they are streaming it on YouTube. To get the link, you just have to make a donation. That means you don't have to pay full price for tickets if you can't afford it. I mean, they appreciate it if you do, but all you got to do is go to WSOCtickets.com. You can do a donation, and then you can stream the shows on YouTube from anywhere in the world. The shows, there's 3 shows every day, 6, 8, and 10 p.m. Pacific time. So that means if you're in a different time zone, it's going to be a little bit of a different time. So make sure you're paying attention to that if you decide to watch these shows. Now, before we get into this conversation, make sure, if you haven't done so, subscribe to the podcast. It's important. And maybe leave a 5-star review or a 5-star rating and a nice review. That helps too. Another thing I want to talk about real quick before we get into this, I've got new merch out. That's right. I've got new merch with a new Art of Bombing design. It was designed by a fantastic graphic designer, Michelle Mildred, and it's fantastic. So if you want to support the podcast and get some pod swag, you can just head over to our Facebook page or our website, artofbombingpod.com, and you can see the links to this new merch. They're great. People have already been buying some of them, and thank you to the people that have been buying some of this new merch with this new artwork. So, all right, that's going to do it for this little intro. Like I said, we got lots of great episodes coming up this week, so let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Jared. Enjoy.
It's now time for the stand-up soundbite.
I recently did a comedy festival back in Indiana, and I texted a buddy of mine. I was like, hey, you should come see me perform. I've got a bunch of shows this weekend. And he had seen me perform a while back, and he texted me back, and he goes, oh, have you improved? And we don't talk anymore. We don't talk at all anymore. I tell all my friends back in Indiana that the big difference between Indiana and Los Angeles is that out here I've actually used the sentence, oh yeah, I know a pretty good parking lot near there. Back in Indiana, if you say the good book, you can pretty much know they're talking about the Bible. But out here, if you say the good book, people are like, oh, did Oprah have a new book come out? That's crazy. I was recently shopping at a Trader Joe's, and the man in the parking lot was begging me for food. He was begging for food. And I was like, yeah, man, what can I get for you? And he was like, well, actually, I'm vegan. So maybe like some vegan sushi or something? And I was like, what? I know they say beggars can't be choosers, but I don't think beggars can be vegan either.
Like last night, I was up for almost 24 hours. So I got up at 5 in the morning. Well, not on purpose. I wasn't trying. Just how the day ended with travel. I got up at 5 in the morning, which would have been 3 here.
Yeah. Right.
Because I'm in Central Time, and
you flew out of
St. Paul or St. Paul, Minneapolis.
Sure. Yeah.
Got here, did some stuff, hung out with some people. Just kind of moseyed around all day. Did my show, hung out all night,
nice.
And then they did like an after.
Yeah, I saw that.
And so by the time that was all done, I was up almost 24 hours.
Yeah. Dang.
And then I woke up at like 7.
To do podcast stuff?
No, not no.
Or just,
no,
that was
I
just
was
your body clock.
did my body clock. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's how it always is. I was
sure.
hoping to sleep until about 9:45.
Yeah.
Get as much sleep as I possibly could, but
No, for sure. The guy I'm staying with here, Logan. Did you meet him last night?
oh yeah, he
Long hair?
advanced, right?
Yeah, he
Yep.
advanced as well. So we're both from Indianapolis originally, and both live in L.A. We
Okay.
don't live together in L.A., but we drove out here together. So he came back into the room at like 11:30. He was like, "Hey, dude, I got it." I was like, "No way!" And then he was like, "I'm gonna go out to the bar," and I was like already in bed. I was like, "Okay, yeah, have fun. I'm gonna go to bed."
Yeah, I probably should have went to bed, but I was like, I knew that because like I said, I don't sleep very good in hotel rooms, so I knew like coming back here,
Might
I
as
was
well.
just gonna lay in bed and watch TV and be,
For sure,
not
for sure.
sleep anyway. So I was like, well, I just will go network.
Yeah, no, for sure. Perfect time to do that. Are you going to the seminars in a bit?
I'm not sure if I'm going to hit the seminars today. There's a couple that I want to check out, but
The biggest one seems to be the industry panels. That's the ones I'm definitely going to hit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to hit the rest for sure.
yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at. I think today I have I'm doing another recording at noon, so. But I was thinking about going to the finance one
At 3,
at 3,
yeah.
but
I thought about that. What finances are there to manage during the pandemic? Though?
yeah,
That's
right.
kind of how I feel.
That's true. That is
I'm
very
like, yeah,
true. Not a
hey,
lot.
Let's see where I can invest $0. Like,
Yeah, pretty much. How long have you been in LA then?
I've been in LA for almost 3 years now.
Oh, okay. Right
yeah,
on.
I drove out there March of 18. So
Nice.
About 2.5, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. It can be fun out there. I lived in San Diego for quite a few years.
Sweet.
so.
Yeah, I go down there a lot for shows. That's because it's just so much more stage time.
Mhm.
In LA,
It
I
is.
can't get a set longer than 10 minutes, pretty much. But in
Yep.
San Diego, I can do up to 20 minutes. And that
What
doesn't feel
are
bad.
some of the rooms you got to do? In
I
San
mean, obviously,
Diego?
like Madhouse, Comedy Palace, but then the Lestat's room. I don't know.
Yep.
If you, yeah,
Oh yeah, I know
that's like the most fun
Lestat's
one
is probably one of the longest running rooms
in San Diego.
in San Diego
For sure, and it's
I mean,
one of the best.
Yeah.
I mean, that was actually one of my last shows before the pandemic hit. I went down and I did like the 20-minute like feature spot.
Is
in the Stats.
Dustin still running that?
Yeah,
Oh, right
Dustin's
on.
one of the
Dustin's
best.
yeah, he's
No,
he
he's such a
started
good
when
guy.
I was in San Diego.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
he's such a good guy, and he's been super helpful. And I feel so lucky that I actually had a friend in L.A., not a comedy connection, who when I moved to L.A., one of the first friends I made was like, "Hey, I've got this friend in San Diego who does comedy." He just like gave me his number, and it was Dustin.
Oh,
and
that's
Dustin was
awesome.
already doing big things. He
Yep.
at that point was touring with John Christ,
Mm-hmm.
and so he sent a full-time guy. And I just felt so lucky that he was an early connection for me down there. And then he was like, "Hey, I'll give you like a 5-minute spot on the Lestat show." And so over the last 3 years, I've done probably 3 or 4 5-minute spots, and then finally doing the feature spot, which is fun.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
great. Yeah, that's a great room, and it's usually always packed. That was like one of the craziest things. You get there and the line's already going out. the
For sure,
door.
it's an insane audience that they get every week without
Yep.
fail.
Yeah.
Even a bad crowd there is like 40, 50 people.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
And then a good
yeah.
crowd is like 100 packed to the back.
Yep. Standing room only.
It's an
I went
insane
to
show.
a couple shows that I wasn't on just to watch because another comic I knew was doing an album recording there or whatever.
Oh, really?
And
That's
it was
such
like
a good room for an album recording.
Standing room only.
Yeah.
It just like I ended up and then unfortunately it gets really hot in there though, so I was like standing out in the street
Yeah,
watching
yeah,
from
yeah.
the door because I was like I got too much insulation.
sure.
This is too hot for me.
Was Comedy Heights a thing when you were there?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, so
I don't know how long they've been around.
Comedy Heights was actually they were Brouhaha before Comedy Heights. And
Oh,
it was
okay.
I don't know, have you worked with Chris Klauber? Okay,
No,
well
no.
he's a veteran comedian from San Diego that's been around for years and years and years. He's, written for people like Dad Fan and other people or whatever.
Solid.
So he and his at that time girlfriend, they had a production company called Brouhaha, and they most of the what is it?
Isn't there a brouhaha in Ohio somewhere?
There's brouhahas all over.
Is that
now.
like a-
Yeah, that I think that's the thing, especially now with beer. They weren't affiliated.
They're
with
not
any of them.
affiliated.
They weren't
It's just a
affiliated.
name that a lot of
I
people
think
use
it's just a name that a lot of people
because
use.
it's a good.
Yeah,
It's a good name.
yeah. But Comedy Heights, their main room, which I can't. Why can't I think of it at the coffee shop?
Yeah.
God, I can't think of the name. Oh, that's gonna irritate
No,
me.
I know what you're talking about. I
But
forget the name of the coffee
that was
shop too.
That, like I said, Brouhaha had that, and then they decided to stop. And they had a couple rooms at that time too. They decided to stop producing it, and then they passed it over to Al Gavi and Maria.
Yeah,
Who then they remarketed and rebranded
Nice.
themselves as Comedy
Well,
Heights.
and they have such a good email list, right? Which is which is, as I've learned from the last few years of doing comedy, that's the most important thing to a comedy show is having a good email list. That's mind blowing how much an email list matters.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just now starting to do that for the podcast. Actually,
no, that's good.
I'm trying to.
I've got like 60 people on my personal newsletter, and I'm like just trying. That's
amazing.
It's crazy to
60.
It's crazy to think that after all the technology we have, that the best way to get the word out about a comedy show is an email list.
Yep. But the nice thing about that, I think, is because you're not fighting algorithms. Like on social media, you can tweet something funny or
it's going to
tweet
be the top of their inbox no matter what,
or whatever. And nobody might see it. Where with email, it's going directly to them. And even if it goes into a spam folder or junk mail, they'll probably still see it when they're checking to see what's in there. Because, I don't know, I assume most people are like this. I check my junk mail and spam folders every now. And before I delete it, I do a quick scroll just to make sure that what's
Nothing
in there
slipped in there.
Yep, because sometimes that happens.
Yeah,
you get emails from, especially mailing lists. When you get a lot of them, they'll end up start to go in there or whatever.
Yeah, if you just delete without opening them a couple times in a row, at least Gmail just instantly starts putting that in spam.
Yep. So I always double check that before I empty those folders, and I feel like other people do. So so everybody's gonna see your email, which is good.
Totally. Yeah, man. No, it's
how often do you do your newsletter then?
I do it monthly, so I run a monthly show in LA.
Okay.
And the main thing I use that for is to just the week before the show say, hey, there's a show next week. Mm-hmm. And then I also include my other show dates, like obviously pre-COVID. I would include my other show dates of like, hey, if you also want to see me specifically and not just the monthly show that I run, here's other things that I'm doing this month. But that rarely is the feature nearly as much as the monthly show that I do.
Oh, right
so I do a coffee shop show monthly in LA. Mm-hmm. I call it Jerry and Friends, but it's with my name. But it's at a coffee shop I used to work at. They've been super nice, but obviously haven't done it since February.
Well, yeah, we're in the world now. I think we've been so far into the pandemic, everybody just knows.
I know it's so great. Every story
we keep it's funny because we keep like referring to it. And it's like they know.
Yeah.
At this point, everybody knows.
It's like, how much are you performing? Well, it's like, well, before COVID, I'm doing this, and it's like, well, nobody guessed you're doing that now. But I mean, in some cities, there's more shows and stuff, right? I mean, are you?
Oh yeah. So
in St. Paul, are there shows right now?
Yeah. There's some. Yeah. We do have some mask mandates, and they have limited capacity and stuff like that. But there are shows like Acme's running, House of Comedy's running. Other smaller clubs are running.
Nice, man. Because LA County, to my knowledge, is like the strictest county in the country. I mean, we can't even do anything indoor.
That's what it sounds like.
And we can't even do anything outdoor. I mean, like it's so frustrating to sometimes go to a coffee shop, sit outside at the coffee shop, and as long as you're 6 feet apart, that's fine. But if I were to put a mic in the corner, that's illegal.
Yeah, yep.
And I'm like, what?
And they were cracking down on that in San Diego too.
Yeah, I heard about a lot of the outdoor shows. Like all the clubs essentially transitioned their parking lots into little clubs, and then they got shut down.
Yep. I think they're running again now.
Yeah,
though,
I think they finally are.
Like the Comedy Palace, I've just seen pictures of their outdoor setup, and I was like, holy crap, they really went all out.
They doubled down.
They did. They were like, well, we got a huge parking lot. Let's take advantage of this.
Or Dustin, who we just mentioned. I mean, he did like an outdoor tour, and he shot his first full hour special like last month.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep. That's supposed to be coming out on Amazon here pretty soon, I guess.
Yeah, we're plugging Dustin stuff all the time.
Right?
We're just two Dustin Nickerson fans just chatting.
He's a good guy. He was on the podcast a few episodes back, too.
Oh, nice.
So,
solid.
When the pandemic first hit, I was like, well, now that all these comedy buddies of mine aren't working, I'm going to try to get them on the podcast.
Yeah, they have no excuse not to do this.
Yeah. Other than they might not like me. So
Nice. Yeah.
But so the art of bombing, like I said, this is where we're going to transition to telling your story about a time where you felt like you bombed really bad. Or it was a really bad show.
Dude, yeah. You guys want me to jump into it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so easily one of the worst but like funniest because of how bad it was shows I've ever had. In LA, I was working at the coffee shop that I mentioned before, and there was a guy who was a regular there who was like a big surfer. And so he would come in all the time, because we were pretty close to Venice, and he'd come in all the time, and he was like, hey, I'm running this surf competition. Do you maybe want to do some stand-up before I announce the results of the surf competition? So I'm like the only comedian on the ticket, right? And I show up to, it was like an Eagles Lodge. But, you know, like an old person club.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
If the audience
We have
doesn't
lots
know.
of Eagles
Yeah,
clubs
yeah.
in the Midwest.
When I started in
Eagles,
Indiana, I used to perform at Elks Lodges and Eagles Lodges and
Elks
stuff
Lodges,
like that.
VFWs.
And watching people fall asleep right in front of you is not a good feeling, but that's what those shows do. But so this guy, he was like, hey, do you want to do like 10 minutes? I'm doing a surf competition. You can maybe just like warm the crowd before we give the results. And I was like, yeah, that sounds super dope. Like, you know, I'm still at a point in LA, you take everything, right?
Yep.
There's no money involved ever. I mean, even the show I run, I don't pay. I have headliners do 15, 20 minutes that are otherwise nationally touring headliners. I don't pay them a dime because in LA, that's a good show.
Yeah.
You know, and which is just such a bizarre thing within LA. But then, so I'm doing this 10-minute spot essentially, and at this surf competition, the Venice surf competition, and it's just all of these like old school Venice. So like, I don't know if you know about, you know, how in Venice there's like all the new money because of Snapchat and all the tech companies that moved into Venice like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like old Venice, so like real grungy, just like real bohemian type surfer people, and they were not paying attention at all. Right, they're raucous, just so loud, so insane. I had maybe 2 people in the front even remotely paying attention. But then the DJ, when I walked on stage, he's like, "I'm gonna cut you when your time is up, so don't even try to go over." And so I'm in the middle of a joke when the time is about to end, and all of a sudden my mic cuts, like in the middle of the joke, like didn't even get to finish the punchline.
Oh, no.
The mic cuts in a dubstep remix of who's it, Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire, like down, I don't know, that's that song, right? And it's like all of a sudden it's like Ring of Fire. I don't know. It was just like this dubstep, and I'm just standing there with the mic, and he just like, and the DJ just takes the mic from me, and I walk off the stage, and like 2 people clap, and I get off the stage, and it was like a room full of 70 people. I mean, I showed up thinking, oh, this is gonna be a good show. Like, I'm at least gonna have 70 people who've never seen my jokes before, but I ended up having like 2 people who had never seen my jokes before. It was one of the weirdest, and the way the guy introed me was not helpful at all either, because one of the things I do on social media that's definitely a little weird, and I don't know how to intro it any other way, is I do a lot of like juice related jokes. I claim that I'm the world's only juice comedian, is like a bit that I kind of do. So I actually have like a decent chunk of material on cranberry juice, which I know is like a very niche,
very obscure,
a very niche thing. But that's part of what I lean into, right, in the bits, is how obscure it is, and that's part of the joke, right? And I do legitimately enjoy cranberry juice, and I know way too many facts about Ocean Spray and the cranberry industry and how they're doing, and I keep up with the industry partly for the bit. And so the guy who ran the show knew that about me, and he straight up was like, he introduced me, and he goes, "Now introducing the comedic stylings of Jerry the Cranberry," which is not my name at all. I've never gone by that in my life. But he knows that I do cranberry-related stuff, but the crowd has no idea. The crowd has no freaking idea that I do cranberry-related humor.
They just
and I wasn't even
assume that
planning
you're-
on doing cranberry jokes in that set because it's a little bit too obscure. Like, those are fun for, like, the alt rooms, and I have a song about cranberry juice. Like, it's fun for the rooms that you know are going to do it. But for that type of room, I was not going to do juice-related humor.
Yeah.
I was going to do my normal jokes. I was going to do the jokes that I know people in their 50s who surf are going to like. You know, like not my juice jokes. And so, but he introduces me as the comedic stylings of Jerry the Cranberry. And I'm walking on stage like, how do I transition from that to not doing cranberry jokes without giving a background of my cranberry jokes? Because I don't want to be like, oh, guys, so the reason he called me Jerry the Cranberry is because I do a lot of cranberry jokes, and then move on. You can't just move on.
But I'm
after
not
that.
going to do them tonight. Sorry.
It made no sense, and I just remember being like, dude, like, you think you're being funny, and like, we both know what you mean, but if nobody else knows what you mean, that's really hard to overcome.
Yeah.
So there's just like a lot of people who like instantly rolled their eyes, checked out. It was a weird show.
You know, and that definitely, I can see how that can really derail you right away. Like, it's funny when you get these people that don't do comedy and they host events. And they're trying to be funny.
They're
going
trying to be
out
the
of
comedian.
their way to be a comedian.
Yeah.
So they'll introduce you in a silly way, and they have no idea how hard it is to like try to dig yourself out. Because as soon as somebody hears Jerry the Cranberry, they're automatically like, "Oh my God, this is going to just be a hacky, stupid."
Yeah.
Like
100%.
They just start immediately judging.
I picture
all
like
that.
Piff the Magic Dragon or worse. You know what I mean? Like that. Not nothing. No shade to him because he's doing a good thing. But like that, I'd picture that. If I hear Jerry the Cranberry, I'm picturing like a guy in a cranberry suit. Like I'm not picturing a comedian.
Yeah, doing like silly silly dances and songs.
Yeah,
and
for sure. That's a kid's show. Jerry the Cranberry. My kid. Yeah, if I had a kid, they'd love that. Like,
yeah.
that'd be,
Oh, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
there you go. That's
Yeah.
your next project.
Yeah, dude.
Kids
YouTube
show.
channel. Yeah, dude, there's so much
New
money
market.
in YouTube kids stuff. It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe I'll lean into that. I don't know. I put out like a Cranberry rap song during the pandemic that I'm pretty proud of, and it actually like got a little Ocean Spray buzz. And then that guy with the skateboarding video did it. Like he put out that video like a week after me, and I'm trying to figure out how to write a bit about it because it's like if he had picked any other brand, I wouldn't have been derailed at all. If anything, Ocean Spray would have been like, oh, he picked Welch's, we need a guy. But because he was drinking Ocean Spray cranberry juice, I'm like the only guy. The main joke in the bit that I'm trying to work out is like he beat me at a game that literally only I was playing.
That's
Right?
a funny punchline, though.
Right?
That-
Because he just happened to drink cranberry juice in that video, and I've been like intentionally making music videos about cranberry juice for like 5 years. So it's just anyway. That's not about bombing, but that's just one of the crazy things that goes along with Jerry the Cranberry.
Yeah, well, that's funny. I do think you're onto something with the character, though. That you can make a little comic strip, Jerry
Yeah.
the Cranberry.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's been a weird journey. To
Definitely
have that.
not for stand up, though.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a character.
no, not a character
but-
for sure. But the story, I think I'm trying to figure out. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, so that was the bomb story that came to mind first when.
Yeah,
w-
well,
within
that's
this.
it wasn't outside. It was an inside thing.
Yeah, I mean that was like a year and a half ago. Yeah, it was at the like Eagle
Oh,
Lodge or
yeah,
whatever.
you had said that. I'm just surprised because surf event. You know, I to me, I just feel like it would have been outside in the beach or
No, you
something
think
like
it
that.
was
You
the
would
sun
think,
was
but-
down by this point in the day, you know, and so it was
Yeah.
just like them announcing the results.
Oh, gotcha.
But I mean, as with a lot of things, it's just an excuse for people to party and drink.
No,
and, you know.
absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know that much about surf culture, so I don't know how into weed and stuff they are. But that sounds very much like performing for a bunch of potheads.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know for sure about that crowd, but I would not be surprised at all.
because I've did some shows where it was like weed type shows, and I'm personally not a weed person, but I had a lot of friends that were, and they would put me on their shows, and some of the crowds, I was just like, this is impossible.
No,
because they're
for
just
sure.
so tuned out.
Well, and there's like that half second of lag before.
Yeah.
And so if you're just too fast a little bit, then they're gonna miss the punchline because they're still processing the premise.
Oh yeah, that
You
happened
know?
a lot. That
Yeah,
happens a
for
lot
sure.
with them.
Yeah.
You tell a joke and you get nothing, and you're like, well, shit. I
Just a
didn't
little
like
bit of
that.
latency.
And
from
then you
the
go
weed.
to start, and then they all bust up, and you're like, oh, stupid pot.
No, for sure. Yeah.
But I guess as long as they have a good time, that's what matters. When you have a bad set, what do you try to do to analyze it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely the type of person that I don't video record all my sets, but I do audio record all my
Yep.
sets, and then video record the ones I think are gonna, maybe be a worthwhile clip. But I mean, I'll listen to it, and I think to me, right, I judge myself a lot more on like, did I stay in the energy that I'm proud of, right? Because to me, that's the more important skill, is that resilience of being able to have no energy from the audience and still produce the energy. Because it's easy to ride an audience. Right,
Yep.
I think like if the audience is good, anybody can take that energy and be a good comedian. Which is why, in my opinion, my cynicism comes out when I see people who are like ex-football or baseball or basketball players becoming comedians, and then they get a big crowd because they have a big following
they
from
have a
football,
following, yep.
and it's like, well, of course that's going to be an easy show. You're going to seem like a good comedian because you can ride a crowd. But anybody can. Not anybody. I mean, some people probably couldn't, but for the most part, you can ride a good audience. But the true comedians are the ones that can produce the energy
Yep.
from within themselves and not need the audience. And so, to me, that's always, I guess, what I go back to is I listen to it or just remember it and think, did I stay strong in the character or energy that I'm trying to put off? That to me, and if I can say yes to that, then I don't really worry about the audience too much, and just try to be as resilient within that mindset as possible. That's at least how I think about it, because that's the skill that's going to matter long term. Obviously, you want the audience to get on your side, but sometimes you just can't.
Sometimes it just doesn't happen. That's why we bomb. I mean, in that it doesn't matter how good you get either as a comedian, you're still going to have an off night.
Absolutely,
it's going to happen.
Well, and the audience is. there's just so many different little types of comedy that an audience might assume, and I think that the expectations are hard to beat. If you have somebody who's like, oh, this is going to be a Bill Burr, and then I come out there doing cranberry jokes, there's no...
Yeah.
You have to figure out how to present yourself in a way that the expectation is what you're going to give, and that is then where the really true, I think, the top comedians shine. Is even the weird ones like Dimitri Martin or whatever. You don't go to a Dimitri Martin show expecting somebody to just kind of like, I don't know, crap on mainstream culture. You expect him to be weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that actually kind of goes back to how the guy that was running that event introduced you, because by
100%.
introducing you like that, he gave the audience this expectation. This weird expectation, yep.
And I'm never going to fit that. Whatever comes to your mind when you hear Jerry the Cranberry, I'm never going to fit that.
That's very true. It's very catchy though. Like I could just say that all day, Jerry the Cranberry. Like,
for sure.
It rolls right off the tongue.
It does a little bit too easily, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's because even my Instagram bio and whatnot is like the world's only Jewish comedian, like stuff like that. It's just it's a vibe I play into. But Jerry the Cranberry, it just feels too tongue in cheek.
Oh, for sure.
A little bit too kitsch. Yeah,
totally see that.
Yeah,
but it's amazing though how, I don't know, like I said with hosts and stuff, they just don't get it. They try to be funny and then they just
if it's like not a comedy show. Yeah, like a fundraiser or something like that, for sure.
Well, even sometimes there's comedy shows where a producer that doesn't do comedy, they're just hosting it, and even
a new person to comedy who's using the show as an in.
Yep, the intro. I mean, it doesn't matter who gives the intro. If somebody gives you a bad intro, it's hard to recover from that.
And especially if you're trying to respect the host, because if somebody gives you a bad intro, it's really the only way to recover is to kind of like shit on the host and be like, that was stupid, let me tell you about myself, and that can get the audience on your side, but that kind of is hard if you're also trying to figure out how to respect the producer or the host.
Also, it can backfire and you shit on the host and they could be all their friends, or the producer could be all their friends, and then the crowd doesn't like you because of that.
For sure,
it's like,
absolutely,
you could go either way on that. So it puts you in a bad place, because I've did shows like where the people just didn't know what they were doing comedy-wise, and they give you, like, not just mispronouncing a name or whatever, but, like, just, they'll say something like, well, now it's time for the comedian. Here's Dan. Just simple, and it's like, I mean, those are all true facts of what I am, but the way it was worded and came out, it just made it makes for an awkward start.
And you gotta overcome that right away.
Yep.
That's why it's kind of funny, because it's become a stereotype, right, of the idea of like, welcome Dan, he performs all around town, give it up, or whatever. And the performs all around town is like what a host says when they don't know anything about you.
Yeah.
But it also works. I think to the comedian, you kind of are like, oh, I guess that means they have no idea who I am, or like they don't really care about my actual credits. But if you say performs all around town, 80% of the audience isn't going to think, oh, that means the host doesn't know anything about him. They're going to think, oh, he performs all around town. I want to listen to. I mean, it's a good default, even though it's kind of frustrating as the comedian to be like, I have real credits.
You could have just asked.
yeah.
I know, it's funny because when people ask me, I'm sitting here right now bitching about them not asking for credits, but then I have hosts that'll ask me what they want me to say, and I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't care. The crowd doesn't give a shit what you say.
Yeah,
they only care that I make them laugh when I get up there.
For sure. And then it's like, there's always the hosts that are like, how do you pronounce your name? And I'm always like, dude, they don't know that they're going to pronounce it wrong. They're going to look me up on Instagram, or they're not.
Yeah.
It's not going to be because you said Kassebaum instead of Kassebaum. I don't know. Yeah. Especially with like a German last name like that. But
yeah, I get it. I have my last name's Bublitz, and a lot of times people will say Bublitz.
Yeah,
so,
that's a fun way to say it, though.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, it's a fun way to say it either way.
Yeah, that is.
Bublitz or Bublitz, I mean.
Yeah, no, that's just fun. You're having fun either way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you do it wrong. And then it's funny because some people, they almost do like a French thing with it, where they're like,
Bublitz.
Bublitz. And I'm just like,
I'm surprised women aren't, just throwing themselves at you to take your last name with such a fun last name as that.
Right?
Right? I mean, they're
there's been a few in my history. I've got a history, so.
And they're like, hey, I want that last name. I want my kids to have Booblets as their last name.
Fortunately for me, I don't think I have any kids. But like I said,
boy.
I think.
I don't think.
I don't think there's any out there, but who knows? There's a lot of nights when I was, I drank a lot. So the bumming of bombing, the dreadful feeling that you get from bombing, how does that typically affect you? How long does it last? How has that changed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, at first, it definitely obviously affected me more, right, as anybody else it would. I think, to me, one of the things that's always been important, right, and I mean, it sounds kind of cliche, but like making sure you have like friends that don't care either way, right? And I could call a friend after a show and like know that they're going to be my friend whether you bomb or not. And I honestly don't know if that's the case with some comedians that are really deep into comedy that just have comedian friends. And it's like, to me, it's been so important always to make sure I have like friends that aren't comedians, partly because of that, because they provide that stability. And so, but early on, yeah, I mean, that's a hard feeling. It doesn't really last too much until the next day, but I would say during COVID and stuff like that, it's harder when you put even just something out online and it bombs in that sense. Maybe not bombs in person, but you realize like, oh, nobody cared about this video I just posted. And I think when I was performing consistently before COVID and I was performing, 5-6 days a week, there's a level of like, okay, well, the next one, I've got the next one. That's the best instinct, in my opinion, is to just say, okay, I mean, it's again kind of cliche, but to say there's always my next at bat. Like, what's the next at bat going to be? Because even if you crush, all that really matters is still your next at bat. There is no, you have to go to the next one whether you bomb or you crush. And if you crush once and you gain somebody who's following you on social media or wants to come to your next show, if you don't crush again, they're gone now. Yeah. So it's like it's always the next one, and I think that's the same way with bombing. But I also just think having a good emotional friend that you can just say, dude, I just bombed.
That's wise. That's a good some good insight on that, because you're right, that is important, because if you just have all comic friends, they don't care if you bomb because they're like, so what? I do too.
Because there's an apathy that gets developed because they also bomb. There's an apathy of like, we all bomb. Screw you.
What's your point?
Yeah, what's your point?
One thing, you were talking about, putting content out there and it bombing. I feel like that, for me anyway, it's easier to let that go. I don't put a lot of work into what I put out, though, I guess. I don't like my pot. Well, I mean,
that's a good way to put it.
Well, but I'm not putting hundreds of hours into a sketch.
Go follow Dan, everybody. He doesn't put that much work into it.
I don't put that much work. I don't put that much work into this. What are you talking about?
What a good Instagram bio. I don't put that much work into this.
Have fun. No, because I mostly, for my online content, I just put out like clips. Stand up.
Sure.
I'm not doing real in-depth sketches and super almost making a short film type of content, just stand-up clips. So I'm like, if I put a joke out and it doesn't get anything, it's easier to let it go, because I know with social media there's so many variables that are out of your control, with all the different algorithms and things.
Crazy. Have you done TikTok at all?
Yeah, and that's
TikTok's insane, because you're like, you can put so much work into that 60-second clip, and it gets like 10 likes. Yeah. And then you see people that are like smiling at the camera,
and they get hundreds of thousands.
And it's such a demoralizing feeling.
Yeah, I see. I'm studying marketing, so
yeah. Currently,
so, I'm about to graduate.
Oh, from where?
In December, Southeast Tech. It's a tech school by where I live. But
cool.
I'm finishing up my associate's degree, so I like doing like social media experiments and stuff like that. And TikTok's something I've been messing around with. And like I said, some things are out of your control. I did one clip. Put up a stand-up clip. It's got over 80,000 views and a bunch of likes. Yeah. And then everything else is less than 2,000. Most is under 200.
Yeah. For sure.
No likes.
Well, and the TikTok algorithm's so crazy, because you can like tell when it hits the next tier of the algorithm, where it's like it'll be doing decently well, and then you go to bed and you wake up the next day and it has thousands of likes, and you can tell that somehow that For You page algorithm just like clicked barely enough to just put you on a ton. And it's so hard to figure out how to get into that, but
well, and it's the same. So I did another experiment. Because now Instagram has the Reels. I've been playing around with that a little bit.
Yeah, I haven't gone into Reels at all.
I put the same exact joke video on TikTok, And then on Reels, it got over 3,000 views, like, within a couple hours. On TikTok, it's barely made it over 100.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the same thing, pretty much, same hashtags, same, text and everything. So I don't know, it's weird.
No, yeah, but Reels has a. Is it right that it has like a pretty hard cutoff at 15 seconds?
30
seconds.
30 seconds.
For 30
so
seconds,
it's
but
a lot
TikTok is
harder
60
to put,
seconds.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
lot harder to try to put a joke up on there.
Yeah.
Because I was like, there's some jokes that I have that are right about 40 seconds, 45 seconds that are pretty good. But it's like, oh, shit, this ain't going to work on here.
Yeah.
It don't work here.
Yeah.
It don't work here. Well, I'd like to end on a positive note, so do you have any pre-show rituals or traditions?
Man, I'm a big, like, pop my headphones on and zone out. That's always been big for me. Just, like, feeling, I don't know, that sense of stillness before the storm, kind of, and, like, just feeling centered a little bit. I do like to, one thing I do before I go on stage, usually, like, in the couple minutes before I go on stage, I'm a Christian, so I literally just repeat to myself, like, I am the image of God, and I don't need anyone to like me, because that, to me, is, like, my base fear going into any stage, or really any social situation, and that to me has been a good thing that kind of like counters that fear of like, I need the crowd to like me, I need to seek approval in this moment, and I think that the crowd can see when you're in that fear, and that's often what triggers a bomb. So yeah, not to over spiritualize that, but that is something that I just like tell myself before I go on stage, and I'll repeat it maybe like 10 times and just kind of like get hype. I do also then often, this is probably a little bit on the weirder side too, like I'll like kind of, punch my chest a little bit and be like,
get all pumped up.
And be like, and especially if you're having a bad day, it's hard because when I first started stand up, right, it's so easy to let a bad day affect your set.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So easy. And then just realizing like, okay, for these 10 minutes or whatever, I'm going to put my bad day on hold, and like approaching it with that mindset. So I'll often also tell myself like, don't worry about your bad day. Just be who you need to be. Right now, the audience needs you to be a comedian. You can get back to sulking over your breakup or whatever in 20 minutes. But for now, just be who you need to be.
That's a good outlook on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it really is.
That's been something that was really,
because it's easy to let
necessary
your
to kind of
day
disconnect
affect
a little
your
bit.
comedy.
So easy, and sometimes you want that, right? And sometimes it can be fun to lean into it because if it's energizing. But sometimes for me, I'm a pretty, I don't know, I can be a sulky sad boy at times, and it's
I think
like
we all can.
Yeah, and it's like there are definitely days where the negative emotion isn't energizing. Because if the negative emotion is energizing, I mean, to be honest, that's what a lot of comedians run on.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never watched Bill Burr be happy.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like he's like, I'm having a good day, let's do some comedy. You can tell he's like, the world sucks. Let me tell you about why it sucks. You know? And so if that energizes you, that's one thing. But for me, it normally makes me retreat into myself in a way that I don't want to talk to people. And I'm pretty extroverted, but being on the stage, if you're in that mood, at least to me, is a more dense feeling of loneliness because everybody's looking at you and it's, they're like, hey, tell me a joke, funny boy. It's like they're not really expecting you to be a three-dimensional person.
Yeah.
So if I'm already in a dark mood, that is really hard unless I can, effectively convince myself you don't need to be you for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You just need to be a comedian. And then go back to having a bad day, call your mom later. I don't know, whatever it takes.
Yep.
And, but yeah, so that's often my pre-show stuff. I also very much enjoy coffee unless it's a very late show, but I'll drink coffee up till really 6 or 7.
I'm same. This is not going to be my last coffee.
Oh, no. I'm literally already thinking when this ends, I looked up, there's a roastery down the street. I'm going to get a good cup of coffee.
Oh, nice.
Because I want like a good, especially after many years as a barista.
You're probably really picky then, huh?
I like a McDonald's coffee or a Starbucks coffee. I can do it for sure. And if that's my option, I'm going to do it. But if I'm going to throw $5 down on a cup of coffee, I want it to be good.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. I would rather go to a coffee shop, like a real coffee shop than a Starbucks or McDonald's.
For sure.
McDonald's, for what it is, for the price.
For the price, it's phenomenal.
Really good coffee.
Totally agree. I'm not above that.
McDonald's up against Starbucks and like your Caribou coffees and stuff. It competes. It holds its own in that market. But yeah, I totally agree.
For the price
You're not
point,
going to beat a good, mom and pop coffee shop type place.
Totally. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, where it's like even diner coffee. I love it. if I'm paying diner coffee prices.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
But if you're paying like this Starbucks, I have an Americano right in front of me from Starbucks. That was like $5.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's water with some crappy coffee.
I got a large coffee yesterday. No, I think it was a small coffee, and it was like just a coffee with cream, and it was like $4 from Starbucks. And then I didn't know there was a McDonald's in here.
Yeah.
I discovered that.
Well, are
after.
is the McDonald's in the casino McDonald's prices, or is it like casino prices?
It's more like it's McDonald's.
It's like airport McDonald's.
Inflated. Yeah. No, that'd be a good
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
It's not, like I think. Well, I got a breakfast combo, but I got like for breakfast this morning. I did the breakfast burrito combo.
Nice.
It was like $7.
Okay.
So
for in this casino, the cheapest you can buy probably.
Yeah. Oh, for this casino, yeah, absolutely. That's the cheapest place.
Yeah.
But I got a small coffee there yesterday, and it was like $1.50 at the McDonald's versus that's $5 that I paid.
100%. No, I'm doing McDonald's tomorrow morning for sure.
And yeah, like I said, I didn't realize there was one until after, like way later in the day, and it's like, oh, it's right below my room.
Yeah. Sick.
Which could be dangerous as well. Now, I'm going to get this wrapped up, but I wanted to touch back. You said that you're a Christian.
Yeah.
Do you do Christian comedy then?
No.
No, you don't. Are you
I'm
trying to be? Like, is that not...
No, I mean, I'm pretty clean just naturally. I don't ever try to market myself as clean, but I definitely don't do the, like, you know how in youth group people do this?
Oh,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to do that.
When I say that, I suppose there are Christian comedians that do talk.
Yeah, like John Christ was that, right?
But there's a lot of... I mean, because there's a good market for Christian comedy.
There is, and it's hard to kind of toe that line as a Christian. I've never marketed myself toward churches and stuff. Mm-hmm. Part of that feels a little exploitive or manipulative even because... there's some really bad comedians that make a lot of money performing in churches, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the fact that these, even as a Christian, pretty negative toward mega church culture in my faith, like I don't really, like that's a part of the faith that is really frustrating to me. It feels very consumeristic. And then to think that these mega churches are saying, oh, let's put $5,000 into a comedy night while there are, homeless people down the street. I'm like, I just historically don't understand how that's what the church has become. So I don't ever really want to market myself, even though there's a budget for it. Yeah. Because I'm like, ooh, as a Christian who's a comedian who does clean comedy, again, not like church comedy, but clean comedy, it's hard to then be like, oh, I don't want those thousands of dollars. Because I know comedians that's the only thing that allows them to be a full-time comedian is doing the church circuit. And I respect them as comedians for the most part, and I have a couple friends that are like, I don't know if you know Jaron Myers. He's a Christian comedian. He's one of the only like strictly Christian comedians that I would say like I think is like legitimately very funny. Like even Dustin Nickerson, he's a believer, but he doesn't do like Christian comedy, but he's pretty clean. And
he's pretty clean. I mean, he does do a lot of like. He doesn't market himself as a Christian comic, I know that, but I know he does do a lot of church.
For sure, he does.
He does a lot of church comedy. Not necessarily in his act, but when I say church comedy, I mean, when I say church comedy, what I actually am trying to say is comedy at churches.
At churches, yeah. I've just never marketed myself in that way because, I don't know, maybe I'll change at some point, so don't hold me to it, but just there's a level of like, I don't know if I want to play into that part of the church budget because if I were going to that church, I would be also telling the church, hey, I don't think that should be where our budget is. There are people in our church and outside our church that actually could use even $2,000 would be a massive difference in their life. So I'm like, I don't know if the church should be spending money on entertainment. So I think if I were a part of that church, I would be anti a comedy night.
Yeah.
So I'm like, ooh, if that's how I am, then should I also then go and be the comedy night?
Yeah.
I think that feels like an ethical conflict.
No, I totally get that. That's a good way to look at it. I can totally.
So that's why I see it. But also, man, I don't know. It's hard because I need to pay rent too. So maybe I'm the poor person. Maybe I'm the poor person the church should be helping.
Yeah, other side of the coin. Side of the coin. Final thing. What's been one of your favorite or best gigs that you've done so far?
Yeah, I think one of my first set that paid me a reasonable amount of money to headline. I did in Amarillo, Texas. Had a ridiculously low expectation. I didn't even know Amarillo existed on the map before I was driving across the country and was like, okay, I should probably stay here and stay here and stay here. And I hit up a couple guys in Dallas. I was like, do you know anybody that does comedy in Amarillo? And they connected me with some people. And I headlined this bar. and it just blew my mind. It was one of my favorite shows I've ever done. I just, did a headline set with, all these surprisingly, I'm chill Texans that I was just not expecting to have such a good time. Crushed, got paid, probably easily my best single night. Just when they passed the tip bucket at the end, because if you crush, you get more money.
Yep.
And it was just like one of these things that was just so unexpected that I was just elated, because I was walking back to my cheap hotel that night and just thinking, like, man, if I could reproduce this
on a regular basis,
this would be the best life ever. And that, I think, was just one of the best feelings in the world, because I don't like headline consistently. Yeah. So it was like, I can only headline, and I say that in air quotes because it's like I can only really headline if it's like these weird independent shows, So
that's a lot of comics.
For sure.
So you're
for
not
sure.
alone on that.
No, for sure. And so, but that was just one of those nights where I was like, man, if I could do this even like 3 times a month, like I could pay my bills, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, or at least pay my rent. I don't know. And just like,
but even that'd be huge. I mean,
no, it'd be huge.
There's been times where I've used money from comedy to even make like a car payment or pay a month's worth of rent, and it feels so good.
I remember the first time I got paid like $50 for a show, and I paid for groceries the next day with that $50. I felt so. Yeah. I was like, I'm living the dream. It's no longer free beer. It's legitimate cash in my pocket now. That's crazy.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the dream. But that's the show that comes to mind for that, because it's just like, man. Especially because it felt so unexpected. Because Amarillo is like a 200,000 person town. Had no offense to Amarillo, Texas, incredibly low expectations, and it just like blew me away to have like $50, 50 people, just psyched for a comedy show.
Yeah.
And then I came and turned out, and we're having a blast. And I was like, man, I was like, Amarillo's the little golden nugget of comedy I didn't know existed.
I want to come back here.
Yeah, I was like, oh, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you.
Dude, thank you, Dan. This is great.
The Art of Bombing is a Blitz Entertainment production. Hosted and produced by Dan Bublitz Jr., The Art of Bombing intro music was written and performed by John Holt. All other music used in this podcast was under the Creative Commons license. If you would like to help The Art of Bombing, you can do so by subscribing, rating, and reviewing our show on whatever podcast application you use to listen to The Art of Bombing. For previous episodes, blogs, and more, visit artofbombingpod.com. Have a great week, and remember, stay safe so you can live to love.